Stand by for the Brewery Underground Podcast.
In Nashville's harbor wise, craft and brews will meet the skies. Stephen Scott, they lead the way. Brewery Underground, night and day. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite.
We are kicking off the summer season on the Brewery Underground podcast. And, Scott, summer's a big deal for us because we're probably going to be hanging out at breweries. We're going to probably be somewhere drinking some beer. But you know what? There is also a possibility that we may be drinking some other options as well.
You don't say.
I
First
do
of all,
say.
We're the area we live in Nashville. Summer can be defined in April.
That's true.
As far as the weather goes, it's really hit us here in the past couple of weeks, and it's gotten really hot. Kind of true to form, here, and it's before the actual summer hits on the calendar. We feel it.
We do feel it, yes. And we're going to be feeling it a lot over the next couple of months. But it is our pleasure today to welcome in from Best Day Brewing, Tate Huffard. He is the CEO and founder, and Jeremy Rudolf, the head brewer. And we're bringing these guys in because we are talking NA today on the Brewery Underground podcast. And gentlemen, welcome. We're very glad to have you.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. We talk about, we like to cover all facets of beer, whether it be yeast. We had a yeast episode. It's not out yet. Will be out when this comes out. We've had grains on. We're working on hops. We're talking about different brewers. This is another one of those things, NA beer, and it's come up in many of our conversations with brewers is having NA beer. So this kind of fits that bill. We like to inform and maybe educate. So I think this is another one of those episodes.
Yeah, well, it's a brave new world we're living in. I'm glad that NA beer is on the list.
Yeah, it really goes into that. We've been doing this podcast now for about 3 years, and almost every time we do an episode with a brewer or a brewery owner, they talk about how the marketplace has changed so much, and people are looking at a lot of different options, and they certainly want them. First off the bat, we have to thank you guys because you all sent us a lot of NA beer. And I will say it's a plethora, and we certainly appreciate it, man. I know Scott and I have been drinking them over the past week or so. In fact, I am drinking your Kolsch right now,
Nice.
and I think the Kolsch has become my favorite. This is the second time, so drinking it in the Brewery Underground glass here. But cheers, fellows, and certainly appreciate it.
Yep. I've got the Galaxy Ripple, the Imperial IPA, and I was saving this one for this. I've had a couple of the ones previously, but this one is excellent. This is a really great beer. Another one that stood out for me too was the Mexican lager.
Electrolyme.
Got you covered, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really good beer, and I've still got a couple more. I haven't had the Kolsch yet.
That one's a
they're
good
all-
one
season of
for beating
Electrolyme
the
right now.
humidity in Nashville. That
Yes.
Electrolyme, that's the ticket.
It's good, and you get that lime and you get that sea salt in there too, and it just makes it
Yeah.
perfect. It's very, very crushable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kiss it.
Steve would go back to what Steve said about getting all the beer. I think he got a tracking number, and he goes, "It's 31 pounds."
Yeah. Thank you
and
very
therein-
much.
Therein lies the problem with shipping beer.
It's a share size.
Oh yeah, it was,
It's the share side. Well, we came prepared on the episode. Like I said, we've been drinking them over the last couple of days. I did have the Electrolyme about 3 nights ago. As you said, it's a great time of the year, especially here, in the Nashville area. It's already in the 80s, almost hitting 90. So certainly a great crushable beer. So we definitely appreciate it. Tate, you founded Best Day Brewing a few years ago. And as we kind of said in the beginning, it really just seems like it's a perfect time to start up a company like this because the marketplace has changed so much.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Best Day started in 2021, but I really got the idea to do this in 2016 thereabouts, which I would say it was less than a perfect time to do it, which is why it didn't start there. But yeah, I really stumbled into this category because I don't come from the world of beverage. I actually come to this world just as someone who loves beer, probably not as much as you guys, but I'm a everyday drinker, um, I just always had an appreciation for what beer does in our culture. It really, like nothing else, it brings people together. And that could be, backyard barbecues. It could be, pizza joints, concerts. I'm out here in California, and, we really enjoy our beers after surfing in a parking lot. Right. And they're just endless ways that beer brings people together. Um, and really the story where this whole thing comes from is, in my 20s, I didn't really have to think much about, the trade-off of quantity of beers to hangover in the morning. And that all started to change pretty quickly in my 30s. And, you add in a couple newborns into the mix, and, you add in early mornings at work and just all the things that begin to stack up in life. And, you throw a hangover in that equation, and it just starts to sting more. And so, I just found myself for the first time, kind of just like taking a pause and just being like, okay, like Monday to Thursday, like, can I cut it out during the week? And I think that's kind of the toe in the water for a lot of people. And I think it only takes one night of good sleep to make you realize, like, oh, okay, like there is a change there. But at the same time, I was noticing that I was also pulling back from all of those things that beer really, facilitates in the social aspects of life, right? I was saying no to a lot of those things. And that felt like a real trade-off, right? Like, okay, I can sleep better, but if I'm not doing anything social, that it didn't feel like a great trade-off to me. And so, I was exploring all the alternatives that people have, and they, your sparkling waters and your kombuchas and stuff like that. A lot of great products out there, not at all like drinking a beer, right? Like they just do not hold the same cultural relevance in terms of bringing people together. Like hardly, I don't know anyone who's gotten together in a parking lot after surfing and just had a bunch of kombuchas. It doesn't happen. And,
Right.
and so very serendipitously, my father-in-law, who lives in Minnesota, come out to California. He's your typical O'Doul's drinker who kind of went to that category, went to that brand very reluctantly, feet first, kicking and screaming. But there was no other option at the time. I mean, there were kind of a handful of those old guard brands, right? And so he'd come over with a six pack, and he'd kind of choke down one and park the other five in my fridge. And so, the light bulb moment for me was opening up that fridge and seeing the beers that I love drinking, which might have, 4%, 5%, 7% alcohol. I've always thought, like, what's the right beer for the right occasion? But, no matter what beer for whatever occasion, I want great beer and I want a cool brand that has a purpose. And when you look at the O'Doul's next to those beers, it occurred to me, like, man, no wonder no one's drinking this stuff. Like, the beer is god awful, and the brand is, I mean, how many brands, how many products out there, forget about just beer, how many products, like when you actually consume that product, have a negative signal to everyone else? Like, not many. So, in terms of a beer experience, I thought, well, what if we could just invert that whole thing? Like, why can't we make a great tasting beer that happens to have no alcohol in it? And for me, the brand story there was what kind of clicked from the beginning, that it wasn't at all about sobriety or abstinence or preachiness or saying, we should all be drinking less alcohol or alcohol is bad. It wasn't about that at all. It was just about the moments, the occasions in our day that really deserve a great beer, but you could make the case that the alcohol isn't necessary, right? It's just about the lifestyle. And it's about opening up that spectrum of beer that I've always, kind of had fun navigating where do I want to be on the spectrum. But that it was like, the more I was knocking that around, I was like, yeah, that end of the spectrum should exist. It shouldn't just stop at 4. It should go all the way down. And if you do that with great beer and a fun brand, good things are going to happen. And that was my hunch. And so, it took the better part of 4.5 years to get from that idea to the starting line, because, I was just convinced like none of this was going to be real if, the world didn't need a slightly better O'Doul's. This had to be great beer on its own. And that's where Jeremy enters the equation, because I certainly didn't possess the chops to actually do that. But Jeremy very much does. And he, you guys are tasting the beers right now. I think, to fast forward where we are today as a category, I get really excited about, as far as NA beer has come, I still think we're in the very, very early innings of this whole thing.
Yeah.
And we can get into why, but it's pretty interesting to see just how far this has come from the O'Doul's and from the NA beer of the last 90 years. It couldn't be more different.
Yeah, it's a really relevant point. A lot of points, really. Of you want beer, and you want even NA. You want it to taste good, right? Because if
Yeah.
the product is bad, people aren't going to buy into it. About 2 years ago, when we really during the podcast, we started hearing so much about things are shifting, right? And we would talk to a lot of brewery owners about they were adding seltzers and ciders. So I did like 2 years ago, I did this thing during the summer on the podcast. I'm going to try all these seltzers and I'm going to try all these ciders. Now, there were a couple ciders I liked. I could not find any seltzers out there that I would really want to drink again. Just was not my thing. And so I was really excited when Best Day came to us, you all came to us and sent us this beer, and I started drinking it, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. The taste is there for each one of them. And these are ones, as you kind of said in the beginning, you want to sit and drink.
Yeah. Well, a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears went into that. And I know we're going to get into it in a little bit, but there's no question, right? That, you can see it in the data, right? Like 0.3% of total beer volume has been relegated to NA beer forever. It's been totally stagnant. There has been no innovation. There's been no intentionality or care or, any sort of real calories devoted to making great beer. So nothing's happened there. But you put some love into that, right? And you come at it with some passion and, a real point of view about what this should be. And lo and behold, people are going to figure out how it fits in their life. And for everyone, it's different. And that's kind of the cool thing that we get to see. People fit it in their day in all sorts of different shapes, ways, and forms. But it's just, it comes down to the quality of the beer, without question.
During that 4.5 years, and Jeremy, maybe this is where you come in, was part of that process, how are we going to do it? How are we going to brew this? The science part of the making an NA beer, as in, do we strip the alcohol? Do we make it without the alcohol to start with? Are there different processes? And was that part of the process in getting started?
So from 2016 to 2021, I wasn't around. So when Tate kicked it off in 2021, he was a wild man with a station wagon and working some early innovation on his own. That's where Kolsch and West Coast came from. They were before my time. Tweaked them since. But yeah, I mean, Tate was working through all kinds of kitchens to baby breweries to all kinds of stuff that brought us along the way. So he could speak more to the details as far as he wants to go down that learning curve. But we're still learning. So it definitely started very small, and it's gone.
But Jeremy, you came from where a number of places where you were brewing beer for years. Now you're brewing NA. How much has that been a learning curve for you over the years?
The cool thing about NA was I wanted to do it for a bit. And you talked about trying all those seltzers and ciders out. The equipment that we use now is actually commonly used in a certain form to polish the base alcohol that's in a lot of hard seltzers. And so when I worked with Oscar Blues and the whole group of breweries back in the day, one of the pieces of equipment that we were investing in was for hard seltzer. And so if you put a beer through, that machine, you get alcohol out one side and you get non-alcoholic remnants on the other side. So if you put a beer into it, you get non-alcoholic beer out of it. So, and you'll see nowadays in the last year, they launched finally a non-alc Oscar Blues beer, using that equipment. But for the longest time, it was all for seltzer, and now they're partnered up with Monster, so they make a lot of the Monster seltzer stuff still. But I started learning that we can do this, and also saw the light in early 2020 that NA beer has a space, and this equipment does an amazing job essentially neutralizing the flavors of seltzer bases, so that when you add the flavor, all those fruit flavors in, they come through really brightly. So that's the system that I'd been working off of. And then after I left that group, I had been working with Tate to actually help source cans and things like that with them. One of the things I loved doing as being part of a large brewery was helping small breweries. Things like crowler cans. We used to sell crowler cans to everybody. We buy the truckload and sell them a cup of sugar kind of thing. So Tate came and was like, "Hey, I'm getting killed on shrink sleeves. What can you do for me? These guys are cool." And then I jumped the fence and I went all NA, and no looking back, no regrets. It's been fantastic. Nonstop learning, which is my favorite thing. Is making mistakes is not fun, but learning is awesome. We've just had a great time evolving the process. It continues to evolve. It's been great. So that's where I came from. It gave me a glimpse of NA, and then I run into these guys that needed help on the packaging side, and it's just evolved from there.
Your website says you have a magic machine that removes the alcohol.
It is
pretty cool.
because you look at it, there's no sparks, there's no heat, there's nothing fancy happens. You watch beer go in and beer and come out one end and go in one end, and then in the middle, the alcohol falls out. And so it's a very high-tech piece of machinery. We work off of a very tight kind of filtration, like reverse osmosis, where you have a very small pore size, and alcohol happens to be very small. Water is small as well. So you get water and alcohol are pretty much the only thing that moves through that membrane, and you retain everything else. So instead of trying to cause something to be distilled off, you are able to retain all the beautiful esters and acids and proteins and color and everything in that beer through that process.
And that's really key, right? Because we all over the years have tried a lot of NA beers that were underwhelming, right? And I typically, for me as a beer drinker, if I was going to reach for an NA beer, like it was the sweetness, it was the kind of cooked off flavor, it was the wordiness of that beer, where all of a sudden I'm doing something less than I want to be doing, right? The beer is less flavorful. It tastes like something else other than beer. It tastes like bad beer. And so that whole experience is something less. And I like, that was not interesting. Right? We're not solving any of the problems that we need to be solving if that was the case. And so, what's really beautiful about this whole process that Jeremy's describing and the beers that he's making is they have none of those flavors, right? They have none of those experiences that were typical of non-alcoholic beer. And so, first and foremost, like we are making beer that tastes like beer and nothing else. And it sounds very simple on the surface of it, but that's an extremely high bar in the world of NA beer, and something that is fundamentally different than has ever existed. And we're even coming into the category, if you just think about the evolution from 2016, 2017 to where we are today, the beers that we are putting out now are again fundamentally different than the first wave of this kind of non-alcoholic craft. And so again, we come to this moment where like, man, this feels like on the one hand, we've been through, it's taken an eternity to get here. But at the, on the other hand, we are just at the beginning of getting this out into the world in a meaningful way.
Tate, how did those first conversations look when you had them, when Jeremy was talking about you were in your station wagon and you had this beer and you're going into various places and you're saying, hey, by the way, How did
Yeah.
that all play out for you?
I think it comes down to like, what I've believed from the beginning is that the way that we're approaching non-alcoholic, and I alluded to it before, but like, that this isn't about sobriety, that this is something totally different than the world had seen, frankly. That point of view, if we could execute on it, if we could do all the things that I believed in, it would be massive, right? We were never in this to be, Sausalito, where I am, to be Sausalito's local non-alcoholic craft beer. That was never the dream. I felt like we had a distinct point of view. And again, the hunch, to take it all the way back to that fridge moment, was that, man, if we could crack this code, right, that this isn't about sobriety at all, right? This is about opening up more occasions to beer. And that's the way people are going to come to non-alcoholic beer. And if you look at where the reality of the category is, I think, just to put a pin in that for a second, the perception of non-alcoholic beer is still one of, lack of quality and is one of sobriety. Because let's face it, we've got 90 years working against us. We understand that that's a challenge that we embrace fully. But the reality of where non-alcoholic beer now couldn't be more different. So, we know that something like 92% of the people that are drinking NA beers, 92% of them are still drinking. They're just drinking differently, right?
Yep.
And we also know that most of the volume that's coming into this category is coming from water and sparkling water and soda, and these non-beer occasions. And that is really music to our ears, because our brand was born there, right? Our brand is perfectly aligned with the way that people are actually participating and drinking these beers. So, that gets us really excited. But to come back to that moment, there was a whole lot of selling that was actually going to happen.
Yeah.
But you could also, you could see it, right? You could see these, like, wellness trends, right? That people are actually starting to care about what goes in their body in the form of food and drink. And people are actually starting to, move their bodies in certain ways and exercise and track sleep and wear things that monitor heart rate variability and all this kind of stuff. And so you got to put all that stuff together, and you could say, man, do we think that all of America is going to go sober overnight? Absolutely not. Right? Do we think that, if we can make a great beer that, people are caring about, how they drink and, want a different option? Sure. Yeah, that was very plausible. But again, it came down to making a good beer. So there was definitely a leap of faith that Jeremy and everyone else, who's on this ship had to take. But I think, disruptive brands and disruptive categories, it's all about that leap of faith.
Are you guys feeling the effects of craft beer in general, or are you guys part of that solution that's helping craft beer and craft breweries? You know what I mean? Because you are that maybe another option within a brewery or another place. Breweries are kind of hurting and craft beer is kind of hurting. Are you guys on the opposite side of that? Do you feel like?
Well, I think that for basically ever, and it didn't matter if we were talking to retailers or distributors or breweries, non-alcoholic beer, well, I mean, after we got laughed out of the room, it was thought of as a threat. Like, man, okay, that thing is growing. We didn't think it was going to grow, and it's a threat because those guys are here, taking our lunch, right? They're telling people that alcohol is bad. It's a zero-sum game. And as I alluded to, like, that's just not the case, right? We are here to expand the pie, and we do that by showing up in more occasions, more moments throughout someone's day and throughout someone's week, right? If we can get them to drink more beer on a Monday to Thursday, if we can get them to drink more beer throughout a day because they're having a lunch beer, and they feel totally comfortable cracking open a beer at work, we're doing our part, because all of that is incremental to beer sales overall. And so once people understand that, then they're like, oh my God, those guys are great. Like, let's have them in, because they're here kind of pulling on the oars in the same direction to here try to, grow beer. And that's what we're doing. And, specifically to craft, we do a hell of a lot of business around the country at breweries. Because let's face it, like, if you're going to a brewery with your girlfriend or your wife or your family, not everyone's going to be a drinker, right? And so if those people can come in and, opt in to that social moment, to that beer experience, coming back to the top of the conversation, the thing that beer does so well is it brings people together. But, if not everyone is drinking, and those people that aren't drinking don't have an option, it creates a lot of friction in order to get them to the brewery. Them having a best day or two on the menu makes that whole thing, just like lubricates that whole thing, and people can congregate and people can come to breweries. And so, instead of a craft brewery saying we're going to go out on our own and, endeavor to make a great beer, and then they realize pretty quickly it's really easy to make a shitty non-alcoholic beer, and it is very hard to make a great one. And they're like, we're going to stay in our lane, we're going to make great beers ourselves, but we're going to have you guys for the NA option, and we don't threaten their business, we complement their business.
Yeah.
And we've heard
that's
that from
one of the
brewers
biggest
themselves.
accolades, I would say, as top accolades for us is when a quality full strength brewery carries our beer. That's like the biggest pat on the back, is like people that drink beer and love drinking beer buy our beer so they have more beer offerings. It's, they're not trying to fake it. They're just, and they do realize that, it's something they don't want to get into. There's beyond even making it taste good. There's NA beer is a different critter because you took the alcohol out. So there's all kinds of other safeguards you have to be on top of. So that kind of goes into why the heck does something with less alcohol cost the same or more? It's like, how come having less takes more? And that's just a hidden truth behind it. It's unfortunate. We would love if it costs less to make, but it also stands in those things that are back in that price also stand in the way of doing a good job on your own too. So it's awesome when we walk into brewery, because we meet up in so many places, go to so many markets. We always go into breweries to check them out. I love breweries, and it's just the most fun. Puts the biggest smile on my face to see our beer there, and the staff's drinking it, other people are drinking it, and it's not and in that instance, it's not a sober thing. It's a so we can drink more beer thing. That's great.
Absolutely. We've heard many brewers themselves talking about that. They drink it during the course of the day, right? Or a term that I really recently just heard, and I think it was Dave Thibodeau that said it: zebra striping.
Yeah. Because you got to have a cool name for it, right?
Of course. I was like, what is this cool thing? And it's like, you have a maybe an alcohol beer, and then you have a non-alcoholic beer, and you go back and forth with it, and you're pacing yourself through the course of the day. And I can honestly say I did this the other day to kind of experiment. I think it was maybe Saturday or Sunday, and at the end of it, I was like, I feel pretty good.
I know. I feel like that way too. After having this, I'm like, I could hook onto that. I'm curious because you guys talked a little bit about this a few minutes ago, but I'd love to hear the response from you both. When was the aha moments for you guys with this? When you're going, okay, we got something here. We're really starting to see things take off.
Yeah, I guess my bar for what qualifies as a great beer is definitely different than Jeremy's. But let's just say I cycled through a lot of not great beers, and then there was one. Right, there was a moment where and it was a country mile behind where we are today. But it was a proof that there was really a there. Like, oh my God, okay, that's sure as hell is different than anything that I've tasted on the market. And that was a real eye opener for me. Because I was doing this nights and weekends, and it was a very frustrating thing because I just don't have the background in understanding, the brewing process to the extent that, I could crack that code. So it was a whole lot of trial and error. But yeah, there was definitely one moment where I was like, damn, that was different. And then of course, that only convinces you to quit your job and do it. And then you're like, oh my God, now I'm selling cases of beer out of the back of my car, which is a whole nother daunting task. But and then on that front, once I had it and I was selling cases, um, there was just so much validation that was happening in points that really mattered to me, right? There was the on-prem and, restaurants and bars just being like, thank you. Like, of course we would take this in. And they really got behind it. And, slowly but surely, retailers got behind it too. Whole Foods, here in California took a really early bet on us. And that was amazing. And that was, the local buyer here really giving us a shot. And, if you look at where Whole Foods is now, almost a quarter of their beer sales are non-alcoholic. That's amazing, right?
Yeah,
As
sure is.
nationally, we're now 2% or thereabouts, right? But again, it had been, non-alcoholic beer forever had been 0.3%. So to go from 0.3% as kind of a indicator on where things were to now on places like Whole Foods that have really gotten behind it in a meaningful way to be, a quarter or thereabouts, it's just an incredible, I mean, it's a tectonic shift in consumer behavior.
What it on the cans, and I think it's on all of them, it says contains less than 0.5% ABV by volume. Is that the kind of the US standard? Anything under 0.5% is kind of considered NA?
So non-alcoholic has to be below 0.5%. Alcohol free has to be below 0.03%. So as close to 0.00 as you can get. So you'll see some beers say 0, and they are, but they're also point something. They don't mention that. And then you'll look at Heineken and it says 0.0, and that's an alcohol free kind of standard. Our beers are 0 point, and we don't keep it right at 0.5 because we wouldn't want to be wrong. So it's 0.4 something. We have a specific target that's in there. You want to keep alcohol does a lot for beer. So taking alcohol out of beer requires a lot of compensation in the profile of the beer. The body of the beer is made up in many ways by significantly by the alcohol. Alcohol contributes a lot to mouthfeel and body. And you think it's just a solvent that gets you drunk. No, it does a lot in those beers. So we don't, if we don't have to, we don't take it all the way down to full 0. Let that little bit help. It really does play an important role.
Nice. I do know that some foods naturally can have alcohol in them. And I think it's kind of under that range too, or in that range, right? Under like 0.5%, like your bananas or OJ or bread or something.
Right.
Yes, you're hitting them right on the head. Some of the Tate mentioned kombucha before can have, naturally occurring. Sometimes it accidentally has way too much. Fruits especially have a way of generating a little bit of alcohol here and there. So orange juice is a very, very common culprit.
I think I remember seeing some kind of video on YouTube. It's probably in Africa, and some animals will go up to this tree where it's got this ripened fruit on it, and they get drunk off of it because it's fermenting.
Oh yeah,
and the
you
animals
leave
are all
your
just
orange
laid
juice out. You leave your orange juice out, you will get more than NA level alcohol out of it. You might have trouble seeing, but it will produce some serious juiceable alcohols.
You got elephants
You'd
laying
be
around
better off
with
putting it
hangovers.
in your gas tank, but it will happen.
I had it as kind of a joke in one of the questions, and it was going to be, hey, you take the alcohol out, where does the alcohol go? But I think there's actually some science. Yeah, like you just said something about like ventilation or something, right? Like is there a process to, or is it just steam off and that has to go somewhere, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. So it doesn't. So if you use distillation, which like Heineken 0, they actually distill it. It goes through a heat process. So it goes up just like, making whiskey. You're volatilizing the alcohol. We don't do any of that heat treatment to the beer because it can degrade the beer, caramelizes it, denatures it. So what we do, nothing goes above the fermentation temperature. So we are taking out alcohol and water, putting water back in, and leaving the alcohol out. What happens with the alcohol that comes off, it can be used for many purposes. It can go into a classic waste stream and go right into like a biodigester, where like yeast and trub and all the things from the brewery outflows go and they get, consumed. It can be used as process water. You can, It's got, but it doesn't come out high strength. It's not like 30% ABV kind of stuff. You're actually passing the beer through a couple of times, so it actually dilutes over time, and you're playing a game with the water table there. But it can go in other products too. You can't fortify beer, like you can't add alcohol to beer, but you can use water with alcohol in it and in other processes throughout the brewery. So if you manage it in other ways, you can capture the beginning alcohol, and it would be high percentage, and you could make something like a hard seltzer out of it. I believe that's been done, but we don't do it. But yeah, there's all kinds of uses for it without having to just have a waste stream as the guaranteed route of it. It can be
So we can't walk
upcycled.
in and buy like a bucket of alcohol that you haven't used. That doesn't.
I mean, some facilities will distill the water and
Yeah.
alcohol that comes out. Like you can send it to ethanol plants, and they will distill it down and take the ethanol out of it. It totally can be done. It just it depends on the facility.
Yeah.
Lots of
Something-
uses for it.
Yeah. Something else I learned recently, and I was curious when I talked to you guys, was there are yeast strains now that produce very little, if not any, alcohol in them.
Yep.
Is that something you guys are kind of considering or looking at, have used in conjunction with your process? Or
Yeah, it's one thing we knew when we invested in the equipment that we have is that the technology around non-alcoholic beer, as it continues to gain in popularity, the technology would evolve rapidly, and there would be all kinds of options along the way. So we play around with that stuff all the time. It's been around for a while. More and more strains are coming out that people are using for different styles of beers and things like that. There's some award-winning beers made by that method. There's other things that go into those products to get them all the way there. But the yeasts that will make low percentages of alcohol are there. They don't match the flavor profile that we're after. So they kind of serve a purpose to not create alcohol, where our purpose is to make beer and then figure out how to make it not have alcohol in it. So it's a different approach. One's using beer ingredients and making something not make alcohol. We're making beer and taking the alcohol out, and it really does, no matter what yeast you try, not fermenting things all the way out changes what's left, changes or doesn't change what's left behind. So there's a noticeable difference in many instances. There's so many different kinds of beers, though, that some of them are pretty okay. Some of them are pretty good. And others, you're like, this one's not really beery, And we love how our process, every beer is beery. There's a very common thing people
Well
say.
said.
They're like, your beer's really beery. Wow. Because and the reason people say that to us is because they've had other stuff, and they might like it, but it just doesn't hit that beery note. And we're after 100% beery.
Logan
but-
right there.
100%
you're right.
beery. I love that. That should be a T-shirt.
But yeah, you're right that yeast can impart flavors into the beer, and especially specific styles. You want it for the right style of beer. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like I mean, we use true to style yeasts for our stuff. Like we make a Belgian style white. We use a true wit yeast. We wouldn't be able to do that. We would have, if we wanted to brew to under 0.5, we would have to use one of the standard NA strains that does not possess any of the phenols that typically come out of that wit yeast. So we use all authentic yeasts. Like our Kolsch uses a Kolsch yeast. We don't fake it with an ale yeast going cold or a lager yeast going hot. But our Pilsners are all Augustiner lager yeasts. We use everything's genuine. We use all the American ales. When we do a wit, we use a wit yeast. Hefeweizens use Hefeweizen yeast. We are brewing full strength beers with all non-GMO, fantastic, true beer ingredients, and love the way this stuff comes out.
Tate, you mentioned Whole Foods being a part of your growing, and were they also a little instrumental in when you're growing? Hey, we want other options as well. Did they have any part of that of you wanting to expand into some of your other beer options that you now have?
You mean in terms of like our offering, our
Yes.
lineup of
Yes,
beers?
your
Oh yeah,
offerings. Yep.
100%. Yeah. We they we talk to them all the time, and we've got a very good relationship with them and other retailers and distributors for that matter. But especially on the retail side, because they're so connected to the consumer that they and to this day, they have a we meet with them often. We listen to the feedback that they have. We listen to the opportunities that they're seeing in the market, and it's a great partnership because they know that we'll lean into that.
We have a
I
bit
would
of
love
a
to hear. I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the offerings that you do have, and what feedback you've gotten, even from people that like to drink those, and maybe they're drinking that style of beer, and they say, "Hey, I'd like to have something NA on this type of style."
Jeremy, do you want to talk through the lineup of beers?
Sure. So the original two are the Kolsch and the West Coast. Kolsch is a just very approachable, flavorful, but crisp and refreshing beer that you mentioned. It's our up there as our most award-winning beer in all the big competitions that matter to us. And then West Coast has been winning some great accolades this year as well. It's an all Cascade hoppy amber that hits right in the middle of. We get people that say I don't like IPAs, to people that say I'm an IPA drinker and I love this stuff, and that it seems to be quite a it hits right in the middle. Nothing overly assertive, nothing too mundane. It just you get the hops. It's got a good backbone to it. And then Hazy was the third beer that came out, and that one was a great fun beer to make. Uses a lot of tropical and assertive hops. It uses Azacca, Eldorado, and Mosaic in very healthy and unhealthy quantities throughout the process. So that's a brew house Whirlpool dry hop, just pounds and pounds per barrel of hops. It's great that we create alcohol, because alcohol helps in the extraction of hop oils and things. Get good transformation there. So we get really good, genuine hop flavors and aromas through that. Hazy's my favorite beer. It's just one of those ones. It's just tasty. I love, the number one thing people are after in a product is flavor.
Yes.
The flavors vary, but the number one thing they want is flavor. And that beer's super tasty. Our first seasonal that came out was Electra Lime, the busy looking can you were holding up before. This guy was our first foray into doing a rotator or a seasonal program. We hadn't done any lagers yet, and we started kicking around the idea of rice lager, Mexican lager, this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, just one of those things that people really enjoy as a flavor. And I personally have a great love for is lime. And I'm a tequila drinker at times, and I just love tequila soda with a little, ton of lime in it. And that an homage to the old Corona with a lime in it. We all know it well, right? And so we played around with a wonderful Mexican lager recipe, and then started bringing in all kinds of different lime products. And we use a pure lime puree and sea salt, and just try to kiss it enough that you notice, not enough to make it a lime drink. Keep it a beer. And keep it refreshing. And so that was my aha moment, was after we released that beer, doing all the development work on flavoring a beer and keeping it beer. And then the reception by the public, where we had no choice almost but to make it a full-time beer. It was so well received. And just the people that didn't drink NA were so many, like, what do you mean this is NA? Like, they were just like, just blown away by it. And so that got us into it, started winding up behind bar counters and stuff, because we don't do draft things, and just created so much inroad for us. And it was just a wonderful beer. And it's up, it's doing great this year. Every year it just explodes around this time. So that's the four core. And then on top of that, we brought Galaxy Ripple into full time at the beginning of this year. It was a seasonal as well. and we wanted to complement our two traditional IPAs, the West Coast and Hazy, and do something that really had a punch to it. It's tough to balance the bitterness in an NA beer. You can have a lot of them and they're thin, and the bitterness is really brash and harsh. So we worked really hard to have a lot of flavor in the backbone of it, and we're like, we're building an Imperial IPA here, and it really was. We, instead of a 3,000 pound malt load into this, we load the mash tun over 5,000 pounds. I mean, it truly builds an Imperial IPA, and then it's Galaxy and Vic's secret hops all through it. And then that's our first foray into using some of the hop products that are coming out now that are very popular, where instead of using like whole pellets or whole cones, there's specific hop oils that can be used at the end. So that we use a little bit of Galaxy product that gives that top note on there to help make sure that the aroma really comes through on that beer. And then the latest beer, which is our current seasonal, is our light American Pilsner. It's called Wild American. It's this guy right here. It's our first beer with a gold lid. Just, hits on the red, white, and blue, and has that white can with a gold lid, classy Pilsner, premium American Pils look to it, and it drinks right up there with them. This one just happens to have less than 0.5% alcohol in it and only be 30 calories. A lot of work in, again, paying attention to what good light American Pilsners taste like and trying to work backwards, because if you start with something that tastes great and you take the alcohol out of it, it tastes different. A lot of good fun learning in this. It's loaded up with a lot of specialty malt, and it comes through with a great amount of flavor. It's just, it's a challenge to fight the wateriness as you build these beers. So and to combat that, you usually have to contribute to body, which is sugars, carbohydrates, calories. So there's a very fine line into getting this. Pulling the alcohol out pulls calories out, so it does help, but it doesn't get you to zero. And if you get to zero, then it's sex in a canoe, as they say. So it's this is the latest one. It's not a full-time beer, but this is the one that's full-time in our mix pack. So we now have 3 light styles, 3 classic styles with the Kolsch Electro Lime, which is a Mexican lime lager, and then light American Pilsners in one mix pack, and then 3 IPAs are all nestled together in our newest 12 pack. So we now have a second 12 pack, which is IPA variety that's just rolling out around the country. And we're coming up on 2 beers that I'll be drinking next week. One of them is an innovation that we had fun with making, a mango IPA called Endless Mango. Okay. And the second one, as you talk about some of our retailers and just feedback from people affecting what we do, we have a council of distributors, of retailers that send us information that we distill down and help make moving forward decisions. And one of them that came out of that process was we're making an Oktoberfest. So we also have an Oktoberfest that's coming out. So true Marzen style beer, brew it in March. Let it lay, smooth and crisp, with that just faint little nuttiness to it. Just fantastic beer. So that'll start landing in the retailers at the late part of July to sell in. Starting in August, it'll be on shelf in the true what the heck's going on? Why is the Oktoberfest at the store in August?
Yes,
it's gone in October. It's
it's a talking point with us all the time when we're talking about Oktoberfest. We love it, so we'll definitely be looking forward to getting that. I know we mentioned, Tate, in the beginning of the podcast that we're kicking off summer. We thought this would be perfect because it sounds like the sales for you guys in the summertime really go up.
Well, yeah, I mean it's beer drinking season for sure, and so we are a part of that wave, and I think we are more and more relevant as a part of that wave in people's summer. And again, it's like I think about this actually not as well, are more people drinking less in the summer? And like, does this mean, more people overall are drinking less all the time? I don't get bogged down in that. What I think is truly happening here is more people are finding more time in their day for a beer. And that beer fits because it's non-alcoholic, right? So if you think about the summer, you're day drinking all the time. There are endless opportunities for drinking a beer during the day, whether you're talking about golf, whether you're talking about sitting on a beach in a chair, whether you're talking about being out on a boat. These are all beer drinking occasions. And if you look at those coolers now, right, there's just non-alcoholic beer in the coolers. And oftentimes it'll be the most drunk beer because you could drink a lot of them. And as we discussed, it's not going to get you drunk. And so, call it zebra striping, call it whatever you will, but people are just they're bringing this into their normal repertoire, and they're finding more time for drinking best days throughout their day. And so, we see that hit in the beginning of the year, which is becoming more and more muted, which we all know as dry January. It's still very much a thing. But the interesting thing is, like, whereas dry January, since 2018 or so was all about, can you do 30 days, 31 days sober? And that was it, right? Then the conversation was over. And it was like, okay,
Right.
back to normal drinking habits. Now it's 12 months out of the year, right? And now it's, summer, because it is so occasion based, definitely peaks. But the important thing there is that this is not a one and done. As you look at the way that the year unfolds, it's a 12-month out of the year, 7-day a week, just great opportunity for drinking more beer.
But how many times though during dry January?
Are you sure there isn't alcohol in your beer, Steve?
No.
You have 10 of them. It's like having one full strength. So I think
I
he's
know,
on
right?
12.
How many times during dry January do you hear people say, I have not had your NA, now I'm hooked
All the
because of
time.
dry January? Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. And that's the key, right? That's the moment where, you could be a skeptic, you could be a hater on non-alcoholic beer, right? That one moment that you try is everything. Because if you have a really terrible beer, it's like, see, I told you, this is back to the days of O'Doul's. No one's going to drink it. And whereas, if you crack open a Galaxy, all you have to do is smell it to be like, oh my God, that is totally different. And you have any one of our lineup of beers and you're going to be convinced that, like, oh, and then you could just see it, right? I don't know what the swearing policy is on this podcast, but
fine.
we have, we literally call it the oh fuck moment. And we have sampled hundreds of thousands of beers at this point. And that interaction is so prevalent that it has its own name, the oh fuck moment. And it's when someone cracks open that beer and they taste it and they're just like, oh fuck, that's different. And then, the beauty is, like, then it's on them. Then because immediately they'll tell you, like, oh my God, I can have that my Tuesday night, right? I got a guy's poker night or whatever. And, it's been really hard for me to go there because I want to wake up on Wednesday and feel good. And we end up drinking a whole bunch or whatever it is. I'm just making up this situation, but it's just an unlock for them to be like, now I can go. That's great. And I'll share them. And then they share them and everyone else has that same experience. And then sure enough, like, that's how these things spread, right? But it spreads with that first sip, because it just has to be good.
We had early on, we had a local place called Honey Tree Meadery on the podcast, and they're a local meadery here in Nashville. And we had them on, and we talked about that Bud Light commercial. You guys probably remember from a few years ago where the guy, remember the King? The guy walks up to the King and he goes, working on this really cool mead lately, and he drops him through the floor because he was talking about mead. Anyway, I think there was a misconception about mead. We learned kind of the same thing. We had the mead. We went there. We realized this stuff is amazing. It was awesome. We might have bought into that misconception early on. This might be that same thing. There's a misconception going in, but then when you have it and you realize, you're like, holy shit, this stuff is really good.
Yeah. And it's super powerful when you do the whole 180 experience, because then you take a hater and you make them into a advocate, an evangelist.
Yeah,
totally. I know we got to let you go. We got a bunch of this. Can we talk real quick about your maybe some of your awards? We're getting close to an hour. Is that okay if we bring up the awards?
Sure.
Yeah, gladly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just looking at time here. I didn't want to keep you guys
There's
too
one
long.
sitting right above Jeremy's head.
Okay.
There it is.
Well, you guys
How'd
have
that
won.
get there?
You guys have won a bunch of awards. I got a whole list of them here. But Jeremy, there's one right behind you. It looks like GABF, or is that World
Beer
Cup? World
Yeah,
Beer Cup.
GABF.
Okay, I got one of those.
There's GABF.
Okay.
Yep. Last year GABF World Beer Cup.
Nice.
Hell yes.
There you go.
Best of Craft Beer Awards and U.S. Beer Open. Like those are the four that we really like to put our best foot forward in. And these beers are oftentimes like right from the market. I mean, I live in Fort Collins, and these beers, it doesn't always work out to go to the brewery and taste 12 batches in a row. So this stuff is not in any way tweaked for judging. It's retail packaging, just great beers, and just super proud of them. Like that Kolsch that won was 3-month-old Kolsch. Just Kolsch, do a good job, all the way through. I mean, every touch point throughout making that beer, all the way through canning it and putting it in a carton, and then the treatment all the way to the retailer and to your house, is an opportunity to ruin something. And heat's the enemy, oxygen's the enemy. So just, great job done preserving that product and putting it in that little 12-ounce time capsule, and then people from around the world judging it and telling us that we did a great job. We got a bronze, so we did get third, but we were the only American brewery to get, for the classic NA style. The other ones were in China and like Slovenia or something.
Wow.
So,
All right.
it really was a world stage thing. And so it's just really fun to enter those competitions. A little bit of a nail biter. Sometimes confusing when you don't win back to back and things like that. Sometimes you win back to back and it feels great. Like, it's just cool. I really enjoy the competitive side of it because you learn a lot. We get a lot of notes back, a lot of great feedback. And it's interesting to see how, three professionals sitting side by side can pull, completely polarizing things out of the product. So it's fun and rarely disheartening.
You guys have actually won some awards for overall business too, and you could maybe talk about them a little bit, like 2025 Brewbound Rising Star, 2024 Best of Craft Beer Awards, Midsize Brewery of the Year, Gold Medalist. Talk about some. I mean, that's great for the overall business too.
Yeah, it is, and it always feels good to get recognition. But again, like we've had a pretty crazy high ambition with this whole thing from the get-go. And as we scale that mountaintop, I think it is nice to get noticed. And I think part of that is the appreciation that these things, like building something like this, sure as hell ain't easy, right? And there's a lot of, it's a roller coaster, and there's ups and downs, and there's constant challenges and problems to solve. And gaining distribution in 48 states, coming from what started in the back of my car is it's a monumental kind of push. And we've been really blessed, or I've been, speaking selfishly, very blessed to have a team of just incredible people that are all super motivated by the task that we're trying to achieve here. And Jeremy is at the top of that list, and he's responsible for the great beer that is in that 12-ounce time capsule. But it's we can make really great beer, and if it goes nowhere, it doesn't do the world much of a benefit, right? We make great beer, and then we've got an incredible team that gets it out in the world. And that's an extremely complicated ball of yarn. So, yeah, it is nice to get noticed in that whole endeavor.
Yeah. Nice. It takes a lot of work to get the beer in people's hands. It's, but people say how they love our branding and they love the liquid and all that. And, it's, you got to get it passed all the way into their hand and then
Yeah.
down in their belly. And, so it takes a lot of people working behind the scenes. We've got a lot of people working directly for Best Day out in the field, and a lot of hard work, making sure the packaging makes them look good. And it's just nonstop hard work. Every day there's a new challenge, which is just another great way to learn and improve. And we've got awesome people on top of it, and just really, really happy to get to do what we do.
Very cool. Your website's got a beer finder on it too. So I think if you put your zip code of your city or something in, you can find where we've done it. There's plenty around here we can get it at.
You can get it.
As a matter of
you
fact,
can also order it online too.
Yep. That's the other thing.
If
38 of the states in the U.S., you can get it delivered right to your home. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from us. We've got a network set up to try and get this beer to everybody who wants it. So we do a lot of events, and people get to try Best Day beer, and they're like, "Where can I get it?" And they might not live in the most convenient, metro radius. And it's like, well, we'll bring it with your toothpaste, on the Amazon truck.
That's really cool.
And you can DoorDash it, Instacart. Like, there's just great access to our stuff, even better access than full strength beer, which is a little bit of an accolade for us. But we've got great access. The beer's fresh. It's a whole other side of the world that I get to help coordinate and make sure that people can get good fresh beer. But Beer Finder's great. Goes down to the store level, goes down to the flavor level. You put in whatever you want, whether you want to go get it with dinner or you want to go buy it from a store. The Beer Finder works quite well. Very, very accurate.
Well, Scott and I think alike because as we all been talking, I was on your page and there's one within 6.2 miles of my house, and I know where exactly it is to go now and get Bete Brewing.
Something funny Steve told me, and I didn't, as we kind of preparing for this and before we got the beer, Steve goes, "You've had some Best Day." And he had looked at my Untapped. I'd had 3. We had gone to a beer fest. I don't know, was it 2025 or 2024? Anyway, you guys were there. I don't recall, but apparently I had 3 of your beers there at one of the beer fests here locally. So I thought that was cool. So, guys, we don't want to keep you forever. I know we said an hour. We run past that a little bit. Anything we didn't touch on you guys want to talk about?
No, this has been really fun. Yeah, thank you guys for having us on. Really enjoyed
Absolutely.
this.
Just really appreciate the opportunity to speak about what we're doing and get people in the know of what really is going on with this NA stuff. There's lots of non-alcoholic beverages, and people drink non-alcoholic stuff, but it doesn't mean beer, a soda and a water are NA. Like, there's a lot of, NA stuff. We make NA beer, and what's so special about it? Well, it's a big process. And if you love the way beer tastes, we do that process for you.
Yeah, we appreciate you've turned us on to it. It's wonderful. It's Brewery Underground Podcast recommended. Is Best Day brand, so we recommend it to anyone. I've got 6 styles I may or may not share with any of my other friends.
I'm the same way. I'm not going to share. They're going to go buy it now.
That's right. But we totally recommend it. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Take care.
Yeah, I just want to add something real quick, too. I just want to say thank you. And I know, as you said, it's hard work, but it's really cool to see a success story. And you guys have really taken off. And hopefully, we'll have you back on again sometime.
Let's do it.
Anytime.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Brewery
guys.
Underground Podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers.